Welcome to Creative Glory, the podcast, where we talk about faith, family, entrepreneurship, and honestly, a little bit of everything in between. From testimonies with guests to funny stories with our family to what not to do. Join us, Britt and Anthony, and our family on this journey called life as we keep Jesus first, grow with our family, and build our businesses.
It actually worked that time. Welcome to another episode. This time I have a special guest. I've known him coming up January 2nd for exactly 4 years, and I only know that because, well, that's when I started working here, and that's when I got to meet this man. He is a very devout family man. Everything that he does is central around family, and that's one thing that we like to talk about, and to be honest, it's not talked about enough. Most people have selfish goals, but being a father, it's more than yourself, and being a husband, it's always about more than yourself. And this is Rizzo, one name like Prince.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. When we talked about doing this and planning it out and stuff, we were trying to figure out, what's something that's, ideally relatable to your and I's situation. And I think, the conversations that you and I have had, over the 4 years of knowing each other, working here at Michael and Sons, I think that, the one thing that the takeaways that are the fatherhood aspect, and, you having, daughters and a son, and, trying to blend all the things together and have individual times with your daughters and then with your son. There's, more to be said and a lot to be taken away from that, because mine is primarily boys, so I don't have the girl kind of relationship. But you and I have had many conversations about, fatherhood. Are we doing it right? The things that a lot of people don't want to approach, don't want to talk about. You and I have had those conversations, mainly on the borderline of like, hey, how do we get this right? Are we doing this right? Guilt, the guilt of, am I living up to the expectation of what I believe is a good father? Am I giving to our sons the means to carry on, the legacy that we leave behind, which is essentially our name and our value.
Yeah, moral guidance, but more often than not, the one thing with you is we always tend to revert back to history. How was your father? How was my father? That type of thing, and then we get kind of we communicate and connect really on that aspect, where my dad, we didn't have a good relationship growing up. Him and mom split. They got back together. They split again. They got back together. So there was always this absence and this hole. And I hated him for the longest time for it. But as I got older, me and him got a whole lot closer. And I saw, the things of what not to do, but still stuck in the thought process of, I don't want to be that same parent, but now I kind of understand some of the things that, the way they were said and the reasons why that they were done, type thing. I wasn't mature enough
Right
at the time for it, but now it kind of holds back. I know me with my kids, because no matter what I do, there's always this sense of inadequacy as a parent.
Yes.
And you question a whole lot more things when you know how you don't want to be. And then you second guess everything. It's like, well, did I do enough? Am I doing enough? Should I be providing more? I should definitely be providing more.
Right. I think that's the one thing that nobody prepares a parent for. There's no book. And, the one of the things I've heard before is, and I try to keep that in the back of my mind, is your parents are still learning. Right. Mm-hmm. So like my mom, God bless her, I come from a single parent home. My father was, non-existent. And, one of the big things for me has always been, my mom's played both roles and, had to kind of be the caregiver plus the enforcer. So taking things away from that and learning from my mother's, the mistakes my mom has made, right? Because clearly all of us as parents, we make mistakes and we draw from them. Good parents draw from them, But the other thing is, learning from her those parts of, hey, it's okay. You can pick up right where you left off. I think that's the beauty of being a father and also being a spouse too in this time, because that's the other part of it, right? Is the cohesiveness with your wife and being on the same page. We talked about this earlier, is when you're married, it takes a, a little bit of time to kind of click and get on the same page, you know, approach being a parent with your children, and then the different parenting techniques, all even down to the way you're going to wrap Christmas gifts, right? Like, who's going to wrap what, how you're going to wrap it. I mean, even just the little intricacies of marriage, they bleed into the facets of being a parent. And one of the things that, you and I've talked about, and I appreciate is like, when it comes to your son and when it comes to my son, there's a lot of similarities, and then there's a lot of differences. And the differences that you are able to share with me, I can draw from and take home, and have those moments with my son.
Yeah. So drawing off of our our spouses. So me and my wife both come from, broken homes. Our parents split. The one thing when we got together and we're like, we're going to start a family, the one thing that we didn't want was to have a broken home. We wanted to go ahead and, eliminate that generational curse right there.
Right.
We understand the importance of having both parents there.
The united front.
Exactly. But the hardest thing is to be married.
Correct. Yes.
And it made it a little bit easier knowing that there's no separation for us. We're not going to split, but it's still, marriage is 100% work.
All of it.
Both have to work for it. The biggest thing that we learned was we have to have common goals. Because if we didn't have common goals, we noticed that there was a point to where we were both just straying away from each other. And how do we get back? How do we get back, some form of not physical intimacy, but, emotional or spiritual intimacy, which can, draw us in closer. So really finding that and really at least having a couple common goals was a big thing for keeping us together. One mindset. We're not going to agree on everything. You don't want to marry somebody that's going to agree 100% on everything that you ever have to say. That would be boring
for the other person, because there's no challenge,
Yeah.
right? The challenge is coming up with, a solution to problems that present themselves daily, right? Parenting, managing money, spirituality, religion, focus, whatever your focus is, goals, that we try to put into place for us, we try to do the small ones, to try to keep the big ones still in the background, in the foreground of what we're doing. But when you achieve the small things, it creates that momentum to keep the drive for the bigger ones.
Yeah, it's all a stepping stone.
I agree with you. I think the big thing is, and I tell a lot of guys that are newly getting married and stuff, like, marriage is never 50-50. You and I have said this, like, there is no 50-50. It is a two-way street. And I've learned in the 11 years I've been married to my wife that you can't come home every day and expect, like, I did my 50%, it's your turn to do your 50. There's days when I walk in the house, I'm on 70%.
Yeah.
And, I'll pick up Sarah's 30, that she only has to give. There's times when she walks in the door and she's, on, 20%, I pick up 80. She'll come home some days and be on 40%, and I'll pick up, the other 60.
Yeah, you can be burnt out.
Yeah.
Just like anything else that you do. It's marriage kids. Not only that, now you have bills, responsibilities,
Finances,
and
yeah.
it weighs on you and it weighs heavily. And I was listening and they said that the way I already knew the way because I grew up with 3 older sisters.
Right.
I'm the only boy. I have 3 older sisters, and it was primarily my mom that was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand, how women think as far as my sisters go. Now, none of them are the same.
We'll save that information for the next one so I can get some of that information. I'm still learning the way women think.
Well, it's not cookie cutter at all. At all. But it's, when you lay your head down at night, it's what are you thinking? Me, I'm thinking, have I done enough? Have I provided enough? How can I provide more? It's those things that whenever I'm falling asleep, it's, my roles is, it's I'm the provider, I'm the protector, I'm the pastor, basically.
The patriarch, yeah, the leader, yeah.
That's my role. And so I'm thinking of those things. Wife goes to bed. She's thinking, do kids have food tomorrow? Did I wash their clothes? Are they going to be ready in the morning time? What do I need to get done? What all is on my list to do?
Right. We've talked about those, those situations and those things that we reflect on, daily. And that's the thing is, like I said, nobody prepares you for those moments. And, sometimes, to be honest, sometimes there's a lot of people out there that do have children that switch never gets flipped. They don't have those thoughts. They don't have these, and these kids grow up in what I like to call, for lack of a better term, like a lost space. There's a space there. There's voids that need to be filled. And we're wondering as men, right, are we pouring enough in the cup each day, right? And did we overflow, right? Did we overpour in the sense of did we go a little too hard? Did we say things that were how does a 5-year-old have context on some of the things we say, right? And then they become 6 and they become 7 and 8. And then it's like, how do you raise your level of parenting to meet those needs, right? Because everybody grows, Tristan, your son, it processes and handles things differently than my son Camden would, right? They're 2 different heartbeats, 2 different souls, 2 different emotions. So for me, I think like one of the big takeaways for me is like, you were talking about laying your head down at night. For me, I think one of the biggest things is that I heard somebody say like, hey, when you're a father, you're like, essentially the captain of your ship, right? And if we're on a plane and we're flying on a plane and the pilot comes out of the cockpit and he's freaking out, right? Everybody on the plane starts losing their mind, because this is the guy that they have complete faith in. Once the plane goes wheels up off the ground, we're going to get from point A to point B.
Stuart just got it.
Yeah, right? Yeah, so...
I let a 5-year-old hop in there. I'm going to sit back here and eat some peanuts.
Right,
Anybody got any allergies?
So we as fathers are kind of like those pilots, and, our wife is not... and we just had this conversation before we even started, filming this podcast. This episode is, we were saying is like, my wife doesn't stand in front of me. She doesn't stand behind me. She stands next to me. So she's my co-pilot, whether she's flying the plane or I'm flying the plane at the moment, we're both each other's co-pilots. And, the thing for me is always trying to remain having control, because I think that's the hardest part for me as a father is having the control, right? So situations present themselves and some are great, some are wonderful. There's so many times in my life that I could go back to a moment and stamp it and be like, this is it. Like, this is why we do what we do. These are the moments. And then there's a lot of times too, when you go to a moment and you're like, wow, I really lost my head. Like I did not react to that well, a few of them, come to mind, but I try to, there was, a famous, quote that it's, it says, a weak man can lose control of his emotions. It takes a strong man to be able to harness them and keep them in check, right? And so we're in this precipice in life right now where the words of like toxic masculinity comes around and machismo, right? Yeah. And so my fear is like, how do I cradle the the growth of my son and not be too on top of him where he's not able to, challenge himself, right? Because it's important that we do that. And then also be a good guiding light for him to leave something behind for when I'm not around. He has the wherewithal to be like, this is how my dad did some things, because growing up from a fatherless situation, you don't have those pinpoints.
Yeah.
So, and you and I have both said, and we've talked, it's like, I've always gravitated towards all types of older men that have been quote unquote like a leader for me, and some things you draw from them, you're like, I that's definitely not the way we need to go. Like,
Yeah.
this is not the way, don't do that. But then there's a lot of them that you're like, hey, some of the things he said or some of the things he's taught me will carry with me for the rest of my life. And these could be anybody, right? This could be a teacher. This could be, the mailman. This could be, somebody that you've worked with for a while. I've met a lot of men in my life that have come in and given me knowledge and filled my cup to be able to take that and use that for whatever I would want, to be a good father.
Yeah. So growing up, like I said, my dad was not a good father, but the one thing that I take away from my dad and that I gathered from him as well as my mom was work ethic.
Yeah.
My dad was extremely, extremely hard worker. I remember he used to work at a steel pour facility. They would do the steel grates and stuff. It was East Jordan Iron Works. And he would work there, and they're pouring molten steel. He would come home, he'd have burns all over him, but being the summertime in Louisiana, he'd sweat from 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning until he got home. And sometimes he'd pull double shift whenever it gets towards the holidays. And as soon as he would sit down, he's starting to cramp.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, hey, I need to chug like a gallon of water, with a whole entire container of salt in there because I'm cramping so bad and you can see it. And so work ethic was never a thing that I ever doubted in him. I knew how hard he worked, and I knew that, everything that he had, he would still send it back home to New Mexico to help take care of his older brothers. And so work ethic was the one thing that I pulled from him, but, being a father was another thing that I never really got from him. So you're trying to, figure out how. And it's like you said, it's when we get married, we don't know how to be a spouse. When we have kids, we're learning as a kid is growing up on how to treat them, how to act, how to react.
Right.
And my oldest, unfortunately, the oldest one is going to be the guinea pig.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, so the first one, never touches the ground. You want to put them in a bubble, no germs, no dirt. Don't touch a dog, like don't eat a peanut.
Yeah.
And then by the time we had the fourth one, it's like, I don't know what that is. It might be chocolate. It might have came out the cat, but you'll survive.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Where's the fourth kid? We have a fourth kid. We do have a fourth kid. Yeah. Like it's, yeah.
1, 2, 3. All right, let's go home. Fourth one's on top of the roof.
Right. Yeah. Camden. So, and that's the other thing too, right? Is like, being a stepdad. Okay. So like coming into the marriage that I had with Sarah Beth, Lewis was 4 years old, and I picked up a role that was already in progress, right? So there was already foundation laid that I wasn't a part of, and then had to add to that. And then, you get to ages where the kids they're getting information, whether it's good information or misinformation, they're getting information from two different males, right? So the biological father and then the stepfather, right? So then there's comparisons drawn, right? So something that you and I didn't have, right? We had my earliest memories of my father were one that he was very selfish. He was, very, inward thinking. He wanted to do things his way. He liked, things a certain way, and everybody else came second. But the thing that the one of the more positive things that I could take away from my actual father, and it has nothing to do with parental skills, right, was the fact that he has the ability to have the patience to figure out things. So he would tinker with all kinds of things, and he would gravitate towards different things consistently throughout when I was a child to now. It'd be like farming, He wanted to, farm or do agriculture, grow things, build things, like he did a lot of stuff with wood and wood shop, hunting, um, just things that he would take time. And I wish I had, if I could draw one thing from him, I wish I had the ability to have the patience that he had to put the effort into, like, kind of not master them, but to really be good at it, Um, but yeah, like we were saying is, having a son or having children, period, is that's the thing that nobody warns you is like, there is no set plan and every kid deals with things differently and they internalize things. And I see Camden a lot have fears that don't need to be there. That that are conjured from things that I have no reason why they should be there. And they bother me because it's like, it's one of those things where you sit and you're like, did I do this? Did I manifest this? Did this something that I said or did or did not do, that it's there? And, I think we talked about it, recently. He's had this fear of being left. He's had this fear, and I've prayed, I've talked to my wife about it, but he has this irrational fear that, like, we're gonna leave him somewhere or leave him, and he's 9, and he gets like paranoid if we don't like pick him up at a certain time. And my thing is, a rational thought would be like, okay, I left him at CVS one day on accident. I jumped in my truck and pulled out and was like, oh God, he was in the toy aisle.
He's hanging out by the red box.
Yeah, like I could see that being the reason why he's having this notion of like, my dad forgot me. But like, Camden has never been forgotten, like ever. We don't let the kid out of our sight. And I love him, implicitly. Like, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't do for him. And so, how do I reach him at 9 to tell him, hey, man, nothing's going to happen. You promise your kids all the time, right? As a father, it's like, nothing's going to happen to me, right? We don't know that. We, in all honesty, we don't. We walk in faith of, hey, I'm going to get from point A to point B today safely, and I'm going to do everything I can, but that's the thing, is life is very fragile. People come and go, and things happen. And, we want to leave that imprint as best we can. And my thing is with him is that what I've been trying to tell him lately is, give it to God. I tell him that. I said, give it to God. I said, when you have a moment like this where you feel that you're scared, I said, sometimes you can't handle those things. And, take it in, identify it, right? So as a 9-year-old, identify what's driving the fear, right? And then give it to the higher power, give it to the big guy upstairs, let him manipulate it and put it back in you when it makes sense. Let him take it and work on it. Because my thing is at 9 years old, what straw do you have to reach for that's going to pull you out of it? As adults, you and I have the coping mechanism.
Rational thinking, it's like, well, what's going on with this? And I remember you telling me about that, and then I told you, I was like, Tristan kind of has the same thing whenever he has this fear of dark. And it's literally like, it can be right here, like scorching your eyes, and he has to go to the bathroom, so every light along the way is just switch the whole way. And I've had to talk with him about that. Sat him down, and I was like, buddy, what are you afraid of? Well, it's dark. Something's going to get me. Okay, let's think about this. How long have we lived here? Well, we've been in North Carolina for 4 years. Okay, so we've been here for 4 years. Now, during the daytime, has anything ever gotten you? No. At nighttime, has anything ever gotten you? No. Have you ever seen anything in this house that doesn't belong, that was not invited in, like a person or anything? No. So you've never had any of this? No. Okay. Well, think about that. Have I ever let anything happen to you? No. Well, do you think I would ever let anything happen to you, mom, sissies, anything? No. All right. So rationally thinking, nah, nothing's going to happen in this house. I'm not going to let anything happen in this house. If anything happens in this house, I'm going to take care of it.
Right.
quick.
Absolutely.
Something may happen to me, but nothing's going to happen to y'all. But
Yeah.
nothing's ever happened. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, okay, so what are you afraid of? And he goes, dark.
Right. And then you're trying to figure out, so that's like, like relatable, totally relatable is like, okay, Camden was told by a kid that, me and Sarah Beth were going to die in a car accident, right? That was like some kid said, your parents probably die in a car accident. Fortunately enough for Camden, we live like the president and vice president. We're never in the same vehicle until the weekend, right? So I was like, as jokingly as you can, I'm like, you got a 50-50 shot of one of us coming, right? But somebody's coming because, we're never together during the week unless we're in a structurally sound, no wheels on it, type structure. But to rationalize, and all jokes aside, with Cam, it's difficult because it's like, how do I reach a 9-year-old to take away a fear that doesn't need to be there, because there is nothing that should drive behind that fear, because there's nothing there. It's an empty fear, and it it will, and then you have the whole you have the whole situation too, where you communicate this to other people and then they have their 2 cents, right? So they're like, well, if it gets any worse, you should seek, help, and you should go talk to this person, or you should do this. And it's like, all those things come home in the bag, right? And then you unpack it all. And then you're like, well, does this make sense? Do I do this? Do I make a knee-jerk reaction and go get the kid counseling? Like, are we placing things and putting in, false bridges for him to cross that aren't going to be beneficial? So like, where do you go from there, right? Where do you go from there that makes the situation better? And those are just, when you and I are talking about this, that's a small portion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who listens to this that doesn't have children, this is a fraction of the day to day. This is a very tiny portion of what we deal with. And now you have 4 kids.
Yeah.
I have 2. I couldn't imagine being able to compartmentalize 4 individuals, all on different age lengths. They're in, you know what I mean? I salute you in that sense, because like, that's
they're all different. So the one thing out of having a lot of kids that you learn is how unexpected every single one of them is, whether it's how disciplined, how they learn. Everything's completely different. So what works with one's not going to work with the other. Some of them have an irrational fear. Some of them have no fear whatsoever, and that's the one that I worry about the most.
Yeah, because it's like,
and it's Faith. It's our 5-year-old.
We need to slow down. Yeah.
She has no fear. She doesn't care. So when Tristan has to go take his dog out to go use the bathroom at night and with the other, but it's still all the same process. And I think the biggest thing that helps with them though is they can kind of, like we do, they can bounce ideas off of each other.
Right.
So if they have something that's bothering them, something that's worrying them, like they don't want to tell mom and dad, like they can talk to each other. Now Tristan, not so much, because he is the only boy. The others are girls.
Right.
So and I've had to learn with him, because I don't, the emotional part, there's some emotions that I'm just like, suck it up, get over it. Like, don't cry about it. Like, there's nothing to cry about. Because I remember one day he came upstairs and he kept crying because his, Faith, the 5-year-old, was being mean to him. Her sisters were being mean to him, didn't want to play with him. So he would come up there crying. And one of them kicked him or hit him. And then it's like, hey, did you do anything to them? Well, yeah, I hit him first. Okay, why are you crying? You did it. And then he came upstairs about 3 or 4 times, and that was the same story every single time. What did you do? Oh, well, I hit him. I kicked him.
Mm-hmm.
I clawed him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, they did that in retaliation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did it after. Okay. Well, they said mean things before. Okay. Well, if you're going to act that way, there's consequences, and you have to understand that. So don't come up here crying again, because if you come up here crying again, it's going to be a bigger issue.
Right.
Because you're causing it. Now, I don't know if you see this, but every time that you come up here saying, oh, well, they hurt me, they did this, and you're the one that actually started it, then it looks bad on you. So whenever they come up here and they actually start something, and, you're down there and they come tell us first, they can lie to us. And it's just like, yeah, like, you did it. It's your fault.
Yeah.
But I had to set them aside. And I'm like, look, crying is having emotions, anger, frustration, sadness, sorrow. Like, it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to show emotions.
Right.
The biggest thing is what led up to it, what caused it.
Correct. Yeah.
And a lot of times it's because he thinks he's going to get in more trouble than he is.
Yeah. I mean,
so and I will say there is a game. I was looking up card games for us to grow closer as a family.
Right.
And they have a game and it's called We're Not Strangers. It's a card game. There's 3 levels. First level is basically like just asking kind of like funny outward questions. Second one's getting a little more personal. And then the third one, you dig, deep. And so with the kids, we got the family edition, and the kids themselves have the kid edition. And so we go around at nighttime, and we try to do it every other night, is everybody just asks 3 questions. So you go around asking 3 questions, and the whole family gets involved with it. You can dig deeper into how they feel, how they process things, where they don't feel, where they haven't felt understood on certain topics. And, if you'd like to apologize to somebody for something, you can go ahead and do it now. Or if you want to confess something, go ahead where, you've made a mistake or you messed up. And so we've been doing this for almost 2 weeks now. And there's also a couples edition, so you can get kind of deeper.
I like that. Yeah.
That's and it's on Amazon. It's like $20.
Yeah.
For the card game.
I definitely have to do that.
And so it's fun because you can see me and my wife, we never sit by each other. We always got 2 kids in between us on each side.
Right. 4 kids. Yeah,
and
you're outnumbered.
When you're asking Faith, the 5-year-old, the questions, she wants to answer every single question. She thinks it's a game where you just cannot be wrong, which you can't, but she knows the answer to everything.
Right.
And so watching her and the way that she reacts to it, and then whenever it comes time for her, she'll get a deep question where it's like, well, when's the time that you didn't feel understood and you wish somebody would have understood how you felt and explain why you felt that way? And she's just there going, I don't know. I play with Barbies. And it's like, all right, let's get you one that's not as much like, here, confess something that you've done to somebody, apologize if you have it. And she's just going the whole time, she's going, I don't know. I'm like, yo, you've written and colored everything in this house. You can apologize for one of those.
One of those, yeah.
And Tristan's the first one. He goes, Dad, I want to apologize to you. A couple months ago, I was playing in the garage, and the car jack, it was me. I touched it. I was like, oh, thanks, buddy, for finally telling me the truth. But you realize, 3 months ago, I said, oh, who was playing with this? And you just looked at me and said, mm-mm. And I was like, no, Tristan, it was you. Amy and Faith both pointed to you, and you just kept going, I'm like, well, this is a safe spot, so you can be honest and you can tell me exactly what happened, and I forgive you.
Right.
But that's the different dynamics. One of them's like, yeah, I've never done anything wrong. Y'all are the problem. The other one's like, yo, I can apologize to everybody in this room 100 times just from the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, they're all in touch with it differently. I've tried. So there's a few things. One I read was what I thought was really cool is a father wrote that what he did was to set up an email, and he emails it every day, or twice a week, whatever. Just writes his thoughts and whatever to his son. And then when his son turns 22, 23, he'll give him the email address, and then the kid can read through those emails. I've thought of that. One of the more previous, recent things I've done is, when I know Ken's having a challenge, I'll take a sheet of construction paper out of his desk, and I'll write something like, you'll do great things, and tape it to the top of his bunk bed. When he wakes up in the morning, he'll see that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then he does the alley-oop on it, and I'll wake up and it'll be flipped over and it says Dad, you always do great things. And so then I'm walking around dragging my heart on the floor, you know what I mean? Because it's you're not expecting your kid to reciprocate that quick, But the big thing is I've looked at I was listening to this thing, and this dad was talking about, he's like, what I try to do is every night go in my kid's room, and he had like 3 or 4 kids. And he says, I asked them, what's a proud moment each day? What's a proud moment? So I've flirted with it. It's hard, and there should be no excuse, right? There should be no excuse for make that little bit of time. But recently, like Sarah and I, we I coach football. Camden's on the football team, and that's a big bonding thing. And we've had conversations over the past 3 years of doing football, because I enjoy it. Is, hey, are you in this because you like doing this? Or are you in this because I enjoy this? And that's one thing. First year and a half, it was like, I like it, Dad, because you like it, and it's like, well, give him the time to see if he really does develop the interest and love. This was the first year, I think, the threshold he crossed with, yeah, I really like playing this sport. Like, he's compassionate about it. But then there's the hard part in there, right? So you're talking about like individualizing your emotions towards each kid and dealing with those things, for each one of them on a different level. Well, walking out onto a football field with 22, 23 kids, and I'm one of them's father, I have to separate myself from my son. And one of the biggest obstacles is one, you have to understand that your 9-year-old, or however old, right? Or however old you are, and you're coaching your kids on a team, they're sharing you with however many individuals you're coaching. So 22 kids Camden has to share his dad, right, to 22 other boys. He also has to hear me talk highly about other people's kids, right? Because when you get a phone call from a football parent, they don't want to hear about your son.
Yeah.
Right? They're not calling you to hear about how good you think your kid is. They're calling you to ask about their kid and what their kid could do to be better, or what, things that they think that I should work on as a coach for their son, right? So one of the big things and draws to that I've taken from that and being a coach and doing that is with Camden, on the field, my eyes are always there watching, right? So he, and he has it so much harder than everybody else.
Yep.
Because I am the one pushing, not trying to take out my insecurities, but I want Camden to excel more than I ever did, right? My any goal for a father who considers a righteous path of fatherhood would want their son or daughter to do better, right?
Yeah.
In whatever category that is, right? Whether it's service, faith, spouse relationships, whatever. I want my son to do better than me.
Oh yeah.
But the big thing I've learned is knowing how far to take them. To because each kid on the team, as you develop relationships with these boys, they hear that and I love them. I really do. I love their compassion. I love their drive. But I learn how far I can push Camden, and then where I need to take a step back. So that was a big eye opener for me over the last 3 years, and very beneficial of doing it, is because I've learned over the 3 years of coaching, it's like, hey, this is as far as you can go, pushing like your kid to do physical things and overcome obstacles emotionally, right? Things he thinks he can't do. But I've also learned too to allow Camden to take those emotions in and internalize them without me interjecting all the time, right? So without me, in the beginning, it's hey, rub dirt on it, keep it moving, right? Or come on, man, I've taken away, and it's slow, right? It's not an overnight thing. It's not where you're like, oh yeah, like tomorrow I'm going to be 100% better. But I've learned, I've had hard conversations with myself, with my wife, because we're not to jump topics, but one of the things you talked about is having the relationship with your wife, right? I think one of the most beneficial things I've ever done is I don't take my phone in the room at night. So my personal phone does not go in my bedroom. My wife's does, and that's fine, right? But I try to make the point that if my wife wants to roll over, right, and have pillow talk, quote unquote, I'm there. I'm mentally focused and checked into that conversation. I think that's been very beneficial in my relationship with her, because there's a good handful of nights where I go in the bedroom and she's reading on her Kindle and she's totally content, and we have nothing more to add to the evening, right? And that's fine. That's conducive in and of its own. Sometimes you need your own space to zone out and refresh. But the other part is when the emotional availability is needed, it's there. You're right, because I'm not totally checked into my phone or television. So with Camden, I've tried to, apply some of the same things there of being like, I'm here for you when you need that on the football field, right? But I'm also here in the background, not interjecting or throwing my 2 cents in or giving you my opinion on everything, because at some point as a father, you want to see them emotionally
grow.
Yeah, and develop. So one of the things I've told Cam with the whole being the fear of like leaving, getting left, or being, stuck at school for whatever the fear comes from. I've said, hey, look, mom or me come and get you by 4:30, right? I said, so there's no reason to panic, right? If you're the last kid standing there and it's 6:00, then I would be okay with you.
Worry.
Yeah, I would be okay with you to start getting upset. I said, but let's look at the clock now, and he can tell time. Let's look at the clock. Let's see what time it is, and then we'll go from there, right? So if it's 4:15, there's no reason to panic, right? Because we're still on schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, giving them tools instead of trying to just force things, like the old fashioned of like, dry it up, you'll be fine. I think trying to implement tools, I think those are the things that help you as a father beneficially help them grow, help them, challenge their thought process a little bit. But yeah, the main thing is like being a family man, being a father, being a husband. There's a lot that goes into it. And I mean, this what we're doing here today, you can make a series, you know what I mean, of having.
You can talk every day about something different.
Yeah, these conversations, because like I said, there's no manual, there's no handbook, and there's very small parts to it that you take every day, and you're like, I mean, in not to ramble, but one of the things is like, a small thing, very small, minute detail of a day, it'll hang you up all day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, did I approach this? Did I say this? Did this come out right? Did I handle this correctly?
Doesn't matter how perfect, like from wake up until one small thing. Like you can have 20 hours of just pure bliss and amazing. And there's one thing that you can feel like it just wasn't, it wasn't spoken the way, and it wasn't conveyed by the other person the way that maybe it should have been. So then you sit there and you're like, dang, did I say it? Did I say it with an attitude? Did I say it like this? Because this is how I meant it. Is she mad at me? Are the kids mad at me?
Yeah.
Is this my fault? How do I fix this? Like, how can I make things better?
Right.
And it's just it could be something to you that may seem like the world, but to everybody else, it's literally like you just walking by and just going, what's up? And just keep walking. And you're like, I don't know if I said that.
Expectation versus reality, right?
Yeah.
So like what reality hands you, and versus what the expectation of what you thought, right? So being married to Sarah Beth for 11 years, I've realized that like if Sarah Beth sets an expectation and it doesn't come completely to the reality of she thought it was going to, she gets upset. Now, whether it's like, angry or just let down or just, unbiased to it of like, it's not what I thought it was going to be. She still has an emotion, right?
Yeah.
It provokes an emotion, so it's like, to me, there's certain things in life, and especially, so Sarah comes from a mom and father who were, in love. They had a great relationship. Her father was very highly talked about, right? Gerald was a good guy. And, Sheila, her mother, was always very daunting, right? Always, she was tough, but she was a daunting, she gave to Sarah, without question, right? She just did for Sarah because she wanted Sarah to know that she was loved and stuff. So coming from like a broken home like you and I, the expectations that we have, when there's a letdown there, we handle it differently. Sometimes we just don't even let anybody know it bothered us, right? Like there's times when we're just like, oh, okay, it is what it is. We keep it moving. For someone like Sarah, it's different. They process it different. So I think one of the hardest things for me in the beginning of being, married to her was like not recognizing that emotion and then giving her the benefit of the doubt for it, right? Of being like, okay, this is how she deals with this thing. This is how she takes this, internalizes it, and then breaks it down. This is how she breaks it down her way emotionally versus the way I do it, right? So
having empathy and
yeah,
really understanding and just being like, you know what, I understand what you're going through. And I've struggled with that. Me and Britt, we've had conversations about it, and most of the time it ends up with, well, you just don't understand how I feel. And I'm like, I know I don't. For me, if this happens, I cannot slow down to sit there and process how it should have went, how I can fix it, like what I can do about it. My thought processes and my emotions towards it is like, all right, this has already happened. This is the consequences because of it. I got to go ahead and move forward. How can I make this either make the situation better or how can I fix it? It's not crap. This happened. I'm feeling down. I'm feeling low. And so we've had conversations about that. And that's been a lead up to, a lot of our deep talks and then wind up coming better out of it and growing because of it. But my thing is the way that I'm gonna, my perspective on it and how I should handle the situation is I don't have enough time in my day to focus on that.
Right.
Whereas she doesn't really have that much time in her day to focus on it either, but it's something that will eat her up. Now, if along the way, if I see a video, hear a song, anything that can bring up an emotion to where I actually think about it and I sit there and it's like, dang man, that sucks. Like I could literally just cry. And just sit in the shower and just cry.
Yeah.
I don't want nobody to see me do that. I don't want anybody to know that it bothers me. And then, after that, I gotta, all right, shower's over with. No more water on my head, my face. Dry
Right.
off. Let's go outside.
Let's go back to work. Yeah.
And so it's breaking down that emotional barrier that I've had set up because I was the only boy. I didn't really have a dad. I really couldn't, I don't show anybody emotions. Emotions are weaknesses. Like,
yeah,
nah, break my arm. I'm just gonna look at you,
right,
and just be like, man, I got another one. Watch out, because I'm gonna swing it. It's that perspective that you have, and it's me sitting there, and it's like, no, it's okay to have emotions, but I would get so mad that either I would black out from anger, or I'm full on I'm crocodile tears crying.
Right.
And then I feel even worse now if somebody sees me, so then my anger gets even higher. And it's like, oh, saw me cry. Now I think I have to beat you up.
Yeah.
Even though you're a 90-year-old man at Taco Bell. Like, I'm taking you out.
Yeah. I think, like, was when it came to like Sarah Beth and being a part of the relationship, and then fatherhood and being a spouse, and not really having a great platform for me to draw from, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the big things for me were like, if there's a situation between the two of us, right? So 11 years of marriage, there's been some hard times,
Oh, yeah.
like marriage. I think love really shines in a relationship is when the things aren't going good, right? That's when love really has to conquer, because it's easy in the situations where everything's going great, you're financially up a little bit,
flow with it, baby.
yeah, everything's good, because I mean there's not a lot of outliers that are pushing the boundary to where it's being tested at that point, you know what I'm saying? But I think with like I told one of our coworkers, we were out fishing, so I'll just give you a hint who it was. We were out fishing, and he was
old
talking,
Captain.
Yeah, old Captain. We were talking. He was asking me, just some things. He was kind of picking my brain because he's gonna get married soon and all that. And I was like, there are years that I could go back to and pinpoint 2 to 3 weeks, almost a month of like it was not good.
Yeah.
Like we had those times where it's like it was rocky, you know. It wasn't to the point where it's like, hey, let's break the chain, go separate ways, but it's like that's where love I think shines through the most, and where you have to really step up your game is because in those moments it's like, okay, I got to realize the fact that, you know, we're two different people. We're on two different wavelengths emotionally wise, right? So with Sarah over 11 years, it was Sarah doesn't get over things as quick as I do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like if there's an argument or there's a situation, I can bounce back in an hour and be like, hey, babe, you know that. And she's like, get away from me. Don't come near me.
Me and Sarah are twins.
I don't want to know you. And I'm just like so much like, why are you still mad? Like, just like, let it go. Like it's over and done with. And I've learned, and it's still one of those things where I touch and it's hot and I'm like, okay, all right. But I've learned though, like, it's like, okay, if we have a moment in the morning where it goes south, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, don't call her immediately. Don't push it. Let her have her time. And then she'll come back, right? And there's times where she flips the switch too and goes real quick. And I'm like, all right. And I hang up. And then like 20 minutes later, you get either the really long text of like, I'm sorry, it's not you. It's just definitely a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I think that those are the things that's like, you know, when you and I have talked, you know, and I appreciate the conversations, but when you and I have talked, it's like we've talked about like, you know, being a dad, dealing with those things, being a husband, and really focusing your where your heart is in the sense of, you know, teaching your kids how, you know, what respect is by showing them how much you love your wife, right? So
Yeah.
like showing them how much you, because Sarah and I have our moments where we talk shit to each other. You know, pardon my French, we do, and
We.
I don't mean to swear, but we do. We have our moments and the moment of weakness, but we do talk, you know, junk to each other, and we say things, but then we have very passionate moments, and I'm not talking about physical. I'm just talking about passionate moments where we're both, you know, having a very deep conversation about what's important to us or what we want to accomplish and what we want to do as adults to be better than where we came from. And, you know, having that relationship with you outside of work is one of the things that I'm very thankful for, right? Because there's been a lot of times when even in the heat of whatever we got going on to make money, right? And to support our families, you never have pumped my brakes and been like, you know, now's not my time. Like, now's not the time to have this conversation. You've always been open to be like, yeah, this is what I do. This is what I have done. This is some of the things I deal with. So I think having relationships like that, having the ability to be open, right? Because I think there's a lot of places and people nowadays that they don't feel they have the ability to do so.
Yeah. And mental health wise, that's a good thing to have, especially for a guy who, I can tell you anything. There's a handful of people that I wouldn't mind telling anything to, that I can bring all my problems to.
Right.
That, you know, it's not something that my wife can deal with or handle with because it's not something that's even on her radar.
Correct.
Being a man, being a husband, being a father, there's a handful of guys that I know for a fact I can go to, I can talk to, I can bounce like ideas off of, that type of thing. And that, to me, the camaraderie with that, and, you know, you can see the compassion that they have for other people.
Right.
And you also have a handful of people that you know that you can't tell them anything because they're an open book and gossips around, and that's what they enjoy, and they like drama. And more so, I have stepped away, and I have zero problem stepping away from any type of a friendship or a relationship where they're not pushing me to be a better person.
Right.
And that's a big thing now, is because, you know, you're the sum of, you know, you're the sum of your 5 closest friends. It's the law of averages.
Absolutely.
And so if you have somebody who's an outlier who, you know, doesn't really push you to be better, whether it's a man, a spouse, a father, anything of that nature, they're not pushing you and they're not correcting you. in that same sense. Yo, man, I messed up. I did this. Oh, yeah? Well, that's good because you're stupid and you shouldn't have done that. But,
Right.
how are we going to fix this? How can you fix this? This is what I've done. This is what I can do. Instead of being like, it's all right, do it a couple more times. Nobody will find out. You're good. Like, no, it's like, I don't want that. I want somebody who's going to push me to be a better person.
Right.
In all aspects. And I know that you're one of them people, and we can sit there and have conversations. You can have deep conversations. We can have lighthearted conversations.
Absolutely.
Typically, there's going to be laughing.
Absolutely.
100%.
Oh yeah.
It'll be serious, but eventually we get to laughing.
Yes.
And like Sarah Beth, that's me when I get mad. I can hold a grudge forever. And I can never drop it. I could care less. I'll tell you exactly what transpired, what was said, how many times it was said, the time it was said.
Right.
And Brittany was the complete opposite. 5 minutes later, she's like laughing, hitting me, and I'm like, leave me alone.
I'm bothered.
My eyes are turning red. They're popping out of my skull right now. Stop. I'm going to the bedroom. I'm locking the door. Don't walk in. And she'll come in like singing songs, playing a guitar. And I'm like, I don't want this. Go away.
Yeah, it makes it. It's like,
she's like, what are you talking about?
It's like putting gas on a fire.
Yeah, she's like, what are you talking about? I was like, we just had a huge blow up.
Yeah.
No, we didn't. That was like last week. How did you forget? Oh, yeah, I just forgot.
Yeah.
But the way that she had grown up was she always would mask those situations where it's a serious situation.
It's a coping mechanism.
And she would just forget it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then now, because we wind up doing, I guess it's marriage counseling. So the nonprofit that she's with, Charlotte Global, they have one of the mountains is family and marriage.
Right.
And so we would get on, I think it was every week or every other week. And it was only for like an hour and a half. And we would just basically Zoom call with them. And we learned a lot.
Right, yeah, and it's not even like
with it. And she was the person who's she's the one who chases after.
Right.
So where I just wanted to be left alone, don't talk to me, give me an hour or two, and then I can come out after being just left alone. Physically touched, anything, just leave me alone.
Same.
I can collect, I can be cool, then I can get out. All right, look, I apologize. This is what I did. Whereas she was, all right, I'm going to chase you down until we correct this. And that would just make me sprint, and then she's sprinting after me to catch me, and I'm just like, nah, just door, lock, window.
The further you run, because of the fact is, like, at that moment, you don't want to be caught up in it.
So like, we've learned that now, and we've worked a lot on it, and so things are a million times better now with us,
right,
in between it. But there's still some things where it's like, I don't know if I can open up as much as I want to about something, but it's all around the general compass of we didn't know how to act as a spouse.
Right.
We had no idea what it looked like, but we grew off of knowing what we didn't want.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So definitely. Not knowing what we didn't want was way more valuable to us than trying to figure out, like, oh, well, they have a good relationship. Their relationship's good in the public eye.
Right.
Like, I want it like that. I don't.
Right.
I want ours because I know exactly what we don't want. What exactly is not going to happen with our family.
Yes, absolutely.
So building up, that was our foundation, was knowing exactly what, all right, so these right here, we're not doing this, this, and this.
Right.
We're not splitting up, we're not dividing anything. It's us.
Right.
Foundation right there. So anytime that we would have an argument or something, it's like, all right, well, we can only backpedal so far. But once we get up to where it's like, oh, we should take some time apart. No, that's not an option.
Right.
So how are we going to fix this?
Yes, I think there's a difference there too for you. Is the fact that both of you come from broken homes. Like, for me, it's always been the reassurance of like, hey, like, you're not gonna ditch me when times get tough, right? Like, it's like always like been like that fear, right? The fear that it presents itself because it's what I've thought. Like, is like, okay, the moment things get heated, these two people go this way. Like they can't work it out. And in 11 years, Sarah Beth has taught me patience. She's taught me grace. She's definitely made me a man. I say that all the time. I said, I thought I knew what a man was, but Sarah made me a man in the sense of one, giving me a son, two, challenging me every day. Every day is a challenge, right? Not in a negative way, but a challenge nonetheless. Like just with compromise, understanding, um, being disciplined in situations when you have to check yourself, having somebody hold you to a standard, right?
Yeah.
I think those are very important qualities that you look for in a relationship because, like you said, if you're marrying somebody that's the exact duplicate of yourself, there's no challenge. You know exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to react, what they're going to agree on. And so, Sarah has made me rise to a level. I always say she's the half that always makes me better, right? Yeah, she always does because, she creates these boundaries that, still even in marriage, there's fine lines that you can't cross, right? Which is good. Everybody should have a boundary. But she also creates the comfort, right, of knowing it's like, hey, no matter what happens, in the face of adversity, or if something goes on with the kids, there's always a rock, to like lean on. And that's, I'm super thankful for, because she always gives me that. It's never an illusion for her. It's never a false, a false concept of when I think it's necessary. Like Sarah rides through it, whether it's,
out of convenience.
yeah, she's just there, man. And I'm so thankful for that, and I love her to death. And I just, I want to make sure that I'm all that for her, and then I'm that for my children. I think those are the important things. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I would love to have another one where we can pick up on, bringing more. And I think now, knowing what you and I have, what we've talked about, I think having maybe implement some of the things you've talked about, the card games and being a little bit more open, and then bring that back in a month or two.
Just see how kind of like the dynamic switch.
Yeah, and have another conversation again where you and I can talk about some of the things that are better, because not only does a platform like this give you the opportunity to kind of have a reference point, but it also gives you an opportunity to look at 9 years old or however old, whatever this challenge you're meeting with either any of your daughters, of where you were then mentally to where you're going to be 2 years, a year, 6 months down the road.
Yeah. So we like to have the goals for the kids. Like we try to work on, you have your, it's like you're saying, you have the small goals that you can hit, you can achieve. And there's two types of goals. You have a refuse to lose, and then you have a believe to achieve. The refuse to lose one is one that, you're not going to give up. And then the believe to achieve one is one that know that it stretches you, because you have to have the goals that stretch you. So right now with the kids, we have goals set up for them. What would they like to see in a year? What would you like to see in, 6 months? What do you want to see in 2 years, 5 years, that type of thing with the kids. Of course, some of them are silly. And then they have some of them that are, they're like, yeah, like I want to, like Emery wants to go to New York. Her goal is to go to New York. And so you have those, and then you can kind of check the progress on them, going with them. And looking back at this, Izzy will have this on repeat constantly. She watches all of them over and over again. She's probably going to get mad at me for saying that. She's already corrected me on that, so.
The podcast?
Yeah.
So I apologize for swearing on it. I apologize. I bet.
No, you're good. She can't. She doesn't like me to mention her.
Oh, no.
So I'm going to get in trouble for that already. But I'm at a point now to where my biggest daily struggle is with the kids. I want them to come to me and to talk to me about things. I don't want to feel pushy. I don't want to feel overbearing, like I'm crossing those boundaries with them. What I want is, I want them just to be like, hey, Dad, I want to have a talk.
Yeah, because you don't want
to sit down and have it.
You don't want to paralyze them of, like constantly prying and prying and prying to where they never want to talk, right? Because they're just like,
Yeah, I want them to know that no matter what the situation is, no matter what they're going through, it does not matter. Talk to me.
right.
Let me, even if you think that I am just gonna be like just irate,
Yeah,
I
let's
guarantee
have
you
the
won't.
conversation.
The minute that you get there and you're like, Dad, I need to have a conversation with you.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, let's go to the coffee shop.
I always have
Oh,
time.
we can't go there. Can we just talk somewhere else private? We'll take a ride. Let's hop on the ride. We can go sit out by the lake
I always have
and
time.
you can have the talk. So that's because I don't like people who pry in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. I heard you say, I think you feel like that. No, like I'm where I want the kids just to be like, hey, I want to have a conversation with you.
Yeah,
I have questions about this. I'm having questions about that. Like, why do I feel this way? Somebody said this, and I want to know, like, is that real? Like, does it happen?
right.
Like, let's have conversations. I'm perfectly cool with that, and I'm not going to tell anybody else the conversations that we do have.
No,
Now, depending on what it is, may have to talk to your mom about it.
absolutely.
But
yeah, there's definitely a
some things with Tristan I won't discuss with mom, and unfortunately, mom has already discussed things with me about the girls. I don't want those conversations, like things that she's had to tell them,
right.
and she's like, yeah, like I
Mm-hmm.
went home the other day, and she goes, Anthony, I had to tell such and such about this. And I was like, I'm better you. She goes, you got to have the conversation with Tristan. I was like, sold, easy.
Yeah, done.
That's easy.
Done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't want it with my daughters.
Yeah, no, there's certain things we can handle, certain things we just that's out of the realm.
There's no conversation that any woman has ever had that with my 3 sisters, every single one of their friends, and my mom that I haven't heard before.
Right.
But it's different when it's like, your secondary family, not your kids,
not your children.
Yeah,
right.
No. And I don't want to fingers and ears, la 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 la. Like,
I think
that's where I'm at.
I think with you, with to cap it up, I think for me with Cam, I want Cam to see the potential that I see, to be able to have the confidence to know that at his age and with his mindset and his abilities and his compassion and his drive, that he can do great things. And it's not just writing on a piece of paper, right? It's really what I truly believe he can do, because of the fact of one has a foundation, right, of 2 people that truly, truly love each other. At least I hope, Sarah Beth. But no, 2 people that truly, truly love each other, that truly are compassionate, and both are like-minded when it comes to their kid. And so having that is a way bigger advantage than what I had.
Yeah.
So I want Camden to be able to know that it's like there's so much backbone for you, that if you fail, you're never going to fall hard, in the sense of there's not going to be anybody around there to pick you up and help you dust your knees off. You know what I mean? There's 2 people that are behind you all the way. So have the confidence, have the no fear attitude of like, you can do whatever you want and be good at it and be successful at it, because you have the heart and the drive to do it. Because it's, I see that for him, and I want him to see that in himself. And it's tough because in 9, you're trying to grasp those things, but I want that for him. That's, so I definitely am thankful for you having me on. I'm so grateful. I would love to, a couple months down the road, do it again and bring different issues to the table.
Absolutely. So yeah, we can definitely do that. And just like you, I mean, with my kids, we push them not in the sense of like pushing them just to be like, no, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It's like Emmy, she wants to do violin. All right, you want to do violin? Get you a violin. She's doing it at school. We'll buy you your own if you really want to do it. Do you really want to do it? Well, I don't know. Okay, that's fine. We're not going to pressure you into it, but we just want them to know, and we tell them, just like Tristan with basketball, if this is something that you want to pursue, we are 100% behind you.
Right.
No matter what. You want to write books. I mean, you want to catch butterflies. We're going to be behind you and supporting you the entire way.
Right.
We just don't want you to halfway do it.
No, go
We
all the
want to
way.
make sure that this is something you want to do, and it's like, make up your mind, you're good. Now, if you fall out of it, you find something else that you want to do that's fine. Finish the season that you're in with that, you can hop on the next thing. But we're gonna be there for you 100%.
Right.
We're gonna try doing the best that we can, supporting you in any way, shape, or form. But you still have to know that you have to have that drive also.
Right. Yeah, you do.
And so with the kids, that's what it is. And definitely we'll be back on. The one thing that I heard a couple years ago, and it kind of stuck with me, was I want to make sure that my ceiling is my kid's floor.
Right.
I want to make sure that I can bring them as high as possible so that whenever they take off, they're way above where I was at.
Right.
So it's that legacy with them. And so just to let them know that I didn't come from much.
No.
My dad didn't come from much, but it's progressively gone up.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that I'm pushing myself to my ceiling.
Yes.
And then, that's where they start. That's their floor.
Right.
And
they have that foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think one of the things, and I'll leave you with this, is Jerome Bettis said when he was getting inducted to the Hall of Fame. And of course, I had to bring Notre Dame into it. He's a Notre Dame alum.
He's Pittsburgh.
He's
a Steeler.
He went to the university. But either way, tomato. He said that when he was going to the University of Notre Dame, his father looked at him and said, "Look, when you leave this house, I can't give you a whole lot, but what I can give you is my name. And my name, I've worked really, really hard to make sure that it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Don't mess it up." And that's the thing, is like, for Camden, it's like, I might not be able to line your pockets or pave your streets, right? But what I can do is show you that, one, I love you, two, I'm there, and three, I try to make it lead by example, like show him, like, there's not a lot of people that, have it out for me, because I try to meet people where they're at and not make them come to my level. Yeah. Right. So it's like, hey, I want you to have that same philosophy, as like, go into life knowing that, like, not everybody's where you're at mentally, not everybody's there where you are emotionally, but you can always be kind, right? You can always choose kindness to meet people. And then at the end of the day, if you didn't get it reciprocated, that's fine. But at least at the end of the day, you did what you did the right thing, right? So giving Camden a name like, not just the fact that it's Rizzo, but just giving him that name of like, I'm a good kid, I'm a good person, and no matter what I do, I'm gonna work hard at it. That's the one thing I want to give him. You know what I mean? That's the one thing, if I could, pour into his cup every day, is like, just approach it with a can-do attitude, because at the end of the day, whether you won, you lost, or you draw, right? If you know that you gave what you had to it, there's the what ifs. There's no what ifs. There's no you literally can go back and go, the outcome was inevitable, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent.
Yep.
But I gave everything I had.
Yeah, there's nothing more for me to do out there other than cut my legs off.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I did everything I could. So
that's it. Like,
the floor becomes the ceiling, right? So you know what I mean?
Ceiling becomes floor. Yeah.
Yeah, the ceiling becomes the floor. Yeah, forgive me. The ceiling becomes the floor for them in that aspect of like, I did what my father or my mother taught me was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And this is what they taught me was grace, or extending an olive branch. And I did everything I could for, whether it was my job, my sport, a relationship. There's nothing else I can draw from it, because at this point I've given it all I had. So yeah, I firmly agree, like, with what you said. Is like, that's the caveat to everything we do, is like, set a good example, lead by it, And then, don't beat yourself up over the small things. If I can leave you with that, is don't kill yourself, because they'll tear you apart. But don't beat yourself up over the small things. Rejoice in the big things. Give all the thanks and all the glory to the big guy upstairs, because without him, there is nothing, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing. So it goes without saying, is like that goes to him first. We come second. Love your wife. Choose kindness, and always, reflect on the good. Think about the bad every once in a while. Don't dwell on it, and keep building, keep pushing.
100%. Well, Rizzo, I just want to let you know that I love you, and
I
I've
appreciate
loved
you, man.
and
I love
really
this.
take care of. I love how you take care of your family, and you've never spoken down about them or anything of that nature. It's always uplifting, and it's always coming from a place of love whenever you speak to them and speak about them. And you're just a big teddy bear.
I appreciate it. Yeah, there's always a glow to you when you talk about your kids and your wife, and the things that you deal with. And I draw from that, and I appreciate it, because I do love my family, and I want the best for them, just like I want the best for the people that I care about, like you and the people I work with, and the people I come deal with on my social life outside of work. I just want to be a good dad and be a good husband.
Yep, that's all that it is.
I appreciate it, man.
All right. Well, you'll have a blessed night.